As we've mentioned many times, we are very big fans of Tape Don't Lie here on the Autumn Windbags, and we got the first two dudes on the show. We've had Marcus, we've had BD, and I've been chasing the white whale, literally and metaphorically, Matt Holder. We finally got the trifecta. Matt joining us now on Windbags. How you doing, buddy?
Good, pretty good, man. I appreciate you guys for having me on. I know we've been working at it for a little bit, for a couple months now, so I'm glad we finally got some time that worked for all of us. So.
Yeah, it's perfect timing. Now that we're eliminated from the playoffs, one meaningless game left over. Let's get down to some brass tacks, right? We can start talking.
There we go.
We'll get to Raiders Broncos, at the end for a little bit. But honestly, the big talk of the town is like who's going to be the head coach next season, right? And it feels like it's Antonio Pierce or Harbaugh. I mean, Gruden's name keeps popping up, but that seems like a pipe dream. I mean, is that kind of how you look at it as well? Just hit the big swing with Harbaugh or the safe pick with AP?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like if Harbaugh wants the job, I've said this for a while, like that's kind of always been Mark Davis's Great White Buffalo. If you think about the last, 4 times the Raiders head coaching job has been open, it's Harbaugh's name's always kind of popped up. Mm-hmm. Even when Jack Del Rio got the job, what was that? Almost 10 years ago now. It feels like, and he ended up going to the Niners and then popped back up last year or 2 years ago, and I think even when Gruden was around, he was a popular name. So I feel like if Harbaugh wants it, he'll probably end up getting the job. But I think if Mark Davis isn't necessarily looking for the big fish or is willing to settle, I think it would definitely be Antonio Pierce is a good candidate. And the win in Kansas City, I think, bought him quite a bit of weight. I mean, I can't even. Well, I guess it was 2021 or what the last time they won in Kansas City, and before that had been years. So. I definitely think he's got a legit candidate. The players love him, which I don't know if Mark Davis is going to want to make the same mistake twice with the whole Rich Bisaccia to Josh McDaniels debacle that ended up being it. So, yeah, I think he's definitely got a legit shot, especially if they can win this week and pull it off and get up to that 8 win mark.
Yeah, what do you think about the whole Harbaugh wanting to have personnel control, even though he's never been a personnel guy in the NFL before? Is he going to do that again?
I mean, just knowing what I know about Jim Harbaugh and the fact that he's a pretty big control freak, I can buy it. I can definitely think that he would want it, and I think that's part of the reason why he likes the college ranks, because at the college, when you're the head coach, you're completely running the shot, running the personnel, and you are the GM. So I would think that, and that's kind of my biggest hesitation with Harbaugh. And I think he's a little bit more of a college coach, a little bit more, some of his antics and his weird quirks, I feel like can fade away when you start working with adults for several years versus 18 to 22-year-old hungry kids that are trying to make it to the NFL versus guys that are getting paid millions of dollars and don't really want to be yelled and screamed at and having all these weird little things to try and motivate you. But yeah, I definitely feel like that's one of my biggest concerns with Harbaugh is he's going to want some sort of control. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully they can get somebody in. Hopefully if they do bring him in, can convince him to have a GM, because I think everybody's tired of the whole head coach answering or the GM answering the head coach model that hasn't worked in the last 2 regimes, really.
Yeah.
What do you think was Josh McDaniels' biggest failure?
He's just not personable at all. I think that was one of the biggest things. That was one of the biggest problems, I think, with him in Denver. I don't think he was the same guy where, if you remember, I think it was Tyler, I forget exactly his name, but one of former Broncos offensive linemen, where he was talking about having sayings above the door, and he'd call you out in the middle of meetings and you had to recite it and those kind of things, and just acting a little bit over arrogant. I think he toned it down a little bit, but at the end of the day, if you're just not an outgoing and not someone who's got that type of personality that can get people to buy in and can relate to guys, you're just never really going to be that. And I think that's probably why he's a better coordinator than a head coach, because I think that's a big part of being the head coach. And I mean, see the difference in the motivation and the effort level in the Raiders just when Antonio Pierce took over. I mean, guys are out there playing basketball, and Devontae Adams is literally mocking Josh McDaniels as soon as he exits the building. So I think that was probably the biggest thing, is above anything else, just above the hard-headedness and the this is my scheme and this is what I'm going to do, is he just couldn't relate to the guys and couldn't relate to the players, and he's just not that type of person at the end of the day.
What a great guy to slide in after Josh McDaniels. He just looks so much better as a human. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it's like dating a chick after Gilbert Gottfried dated her. You're just like, oh man, I'm like Fabio around here. Oh, this is great. This is the crumbs I'm picking up after. No problem.
Exactly. You can do no wrong as long as you're not a dickhead.
Yeah.
You can just do no wrong.
I think it was that. And it was also like we didn't expect him to be a rah-rah guy, but we thought like his offensive scheme would be so good that it would make up for that, right? Like he's this offensive genius and Tom Brady's guy and all this stuff. And the offense blew. Like, was it just like more of the first problem? He's not a great people person, so everything fell apart, or was his scheme just overrated? Is he just overrated? Like, why did this offense fall flat on its face?
I think part of it is just he was overconfident in what he was going to do. I don't think he was great at making adjustments. I mean, I'm sure when you guys talk to Marcus, he can call it out all the time. He was getting frustrated with a lot of the play calls where it was just way too predictable. And if we're sitting here watching and can figure it out, NFL, you can bet that NFL coaches or NFL defensive coordinators are going to be able to predict what he's going to do. And I think he was so stuck in his ways, and part of it being this is the way we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to be done, and not being flexible in it, and not really adapting to what he wanted to do or what his players could do best was a big part of that too. Like Hunter Renfro's a guy that stands out. No, Hunter Renfro hasn't had a great time since McDaniels left either, but Renfro's a guy that you want him running a lot of option routes. You want him having some freedom and being able to do the shake and bake stuff that he can do to get open. And with Josh McDaniels, you're going to run this route and it's going to be hit at this time. And if you don't do it like that, then you're going to find your way onto the bench. And I think that's a good example of it too. And, I think the whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing, I feel like he overestimated Jimmy Garoppolo's ability to pick up the system and didn't realize that, hey, that was 7 years ago that this guy had learned it and didn't really ever master it because he was never the starter. And I think he kind of just got a little bit over arrogant in thinking that, oh yeah, I'm enough of a football or offensive genius that I can make this guy a serviceable starting quarterback for us to work, and it obviously didn't. So I
can make a high school quarterback a Pro Bowler,
all pro.
Excuse me.
Yeah, not the alternate that Soto hates so much.
God, I hate this stupid alternate Pro Bowl. You're not a Pro Bowler. If you're an alternate, it's like there's
not
like
Soto.
Seventh alternate.
I feel like you're taking shots at Tyler Huntley there.
I'm taking shots at anybody who's an alternate. You're
it's
not
the Derek
really a
Carr
Pro
thing.
Bowler.
4-time Pro Bowler Derek Carr. That's like
four-time alternate Derek Carr. You mean 4-time alternate? Look, I don't care if it's anybody. It could be anybody. Yeah. It's not just Derek Carr. It's anybody. Dude, like some of these, like Huntley was what, like a 6th alternate or something like that?
Yeah.
Like it's terrible. Like, but he's a Pro Bowler. Like,
you got the jersey. You got the money.
As long as the bonus hits the
right, the bonus is real. The bonus,
that's true. That money's real. It's funny, it's not funny, but I tweeted this in like week 6 or something. I'm like, Josh McDaniels is so bad of a coach, he's gonna make Devontae Adams not a Pro Bowler, and it freaking happened. Like that's the level of ineptitude of offense that he brought. It was like Devontae, like 6th straight or something coming into this season, and it took Josh McDaniels being so bad that, and again, it's not like there was a one-dimensional offense. You got last season's rushing leader. You got Pro Bowler Hunter Renfro, Jacoby Myers, Mayer was coming along. Like it's not like you can just triple team Devontae, and that's it. It's like no, there's other options, and still you couldn't get Devontae to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, nailed it. I think he just cleared 1,000 yards this past game when he had 21 targets, and even that was a little bit in question for a guy that had, in the last 4 or 5 years was routinely getting 1,300, no problem. I mean, barring a huge game this weekend, which I don't particularly see happening, then he's not going to reach that mark too. So
definitely he's not 1,500 he had last year.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all.
Be cool if he did though.
It would.
I'll be there for it.
What do you want the Raiders to do at quarterback next season?
Man, I kind of want them to try and go after one of the top guys. I don't think they'll be able to. I think it's going to cost way too much for them. If they can't get after Drake May or Caleb Williams right now, I'd kind of like to see him maybe run it back with O'Connell, or maybe see if one of these guys can fall in their laps, or at least fall up down to a reasonable spot for them to trade up, like a Jaden Daniels or a Michael Penix now that after he had his big game, or Bo Nix. But yeah, I'm kind of in that spot where I'm not sold on Aidan O'Connell by any means, but at the same time, with where the Raiders are going to be drafting, and the fact that he has had his moments and had his good games, that if they ran it back with him one more year and kind of gave him the full year as being a starter, I wouldn't mind it. That being said, too, I would like to see, if they are going to stick with O'Connell, I would like to see them maybe get a guy like a Gardner Minshew or Baker Mayfield, maybe if he's ends up not re-signing with the Bucs, or even Jake Browning, to have a decent backup just in case it doesn't work out. And I mean, they're going to have to get a backup anyway with Brian Hoyer being on a 1-year deal, and Jimmy Garoppolo likely exiting after, or being a one and done guy with the Raiders. So yeah, I'm kind of at the point where I've accepted that they're going to roll with the O'Connell back, just with how the draft is playing out right now. But kind of a wait and see what happens in the next few months.
I'm trying to figure out how to frame this question.
It's going to get weird here, Matt. Hold
on. No, not that weird. But how do you feel is a fair way to judge Aidan O'Connell? From all accounts, he didn't really get a lot of attention from Josh McDaniels early in the season. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But, even in the Chargers game that he started, he wasn't taking like first team reps the entire week. He was sharing it, and he got thrown out there. So how do you feel is a fair way to grade Aidan O'Connell on his season?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. When you're talking about grading him, you're kind of like saying like the end of the year evaluate. What do you mean? I guess
where he is now.
Well, his only offensive minds have been Josh McDaniels, who's poisoned to every quarterback he touches, and then Bo Hardegay, who's like got thrown into this position that he wasn't ready for. That's it, right? Like it's not like he's been under Andy Reid for 3 seasons and still sucks. You're like, okay, that's not the problem. Like can you judge Favre on this season based on what he was kind of thrown into?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I think that's part of the reason why I'm kind of at that state where I'm like, if they did bring him back, where you give him a full year and like you said, a legit offensive coordinator who can help him and work with him a little bit more, then I can definitely see where bringing him back would make a ton of sense and kind of giving him that fair shot. So he's definitely been dealt a little bit of a shorthand in that sense. But I think one of the things that kind of worries me about him as we move towards the future is that arm's just not very great. It's kind of a pool noodle, and like you can see that limitations, and I feel like too, he knows it because he has opportunities to push the ball down the field when he has open guys, and he just doesn't, and he doesn't let it rip. And part of me is screaming and wants him to at least try it, but the other part of me knows, well, at least the guy knows how he's built, and he's probably not going to make that throw anyway. And I think that's where I get a little bit concerned, and that on top of that too is a little bit more of a statue in the pocket, where when a pressure does come, he's not exactly somebody who I'm going to trust to sidestep it and be able to still make a play. But again, going back to what you're talking about earlier, with a functional season, or as much as of the Raiders can have for a functional season, is seems to be the curse of the franchise for the last few years. I definitely think it'd be a more fair assessment, and again, giving him that full year and full off season, I guess, to be the starter and be the guy moving forward, might be a little bit more quote unquote fair. It's just as we've known and we've grown to know in the NFL, fair doesn't always happen.
Well, yeah, that's my main concern too, because it's like you have kind of cases either way. Like you said, he has some physical limitations, and we've seen the quarterback position. You don't have to be like a speedster, but you have to be more dynamic than what Aidan O'Connell has shown he is. Mm-hmm. Not just to run and get first downs with your feet, but like extend plays and be able to move around the pocket and have that arm to throw to difficult windows when it's off schedule, which we've seen Aidan O'Connell can't do. And I think part of the reason why he doesn't rip those throws is he's being told, don't turn over the ball. Don't turn the ball over, and our defense is killing it. Don't do that.
O'Connell's like the fat kid that wears the T-shirt on the pool, right? He'd rather be made fun of for wearing the shirt than you see what's underneath. He's like, I'm not going to throw the deep ball because I know what's going to happen. And I'd rather be made fun of for not throwing the ball than
he'll throw the deep ball on time, but he won't throw the deep ball off schedule. He won't do that. Yeah. But again, like it's not just Josh McDaniels that didn't do him any favors. Like I didn't want Derek Carr throwing the ball 46 times, let alone Aidan O'Connell throwing the ball 46 times, and he threw the ball over 40 times, multiple times this season. And I just don't understand how you're trying to highlight a quarterback's attributes by having him throw that many times when he's shown you, like the more times he throws, the more times he has a chance of being put in that position where he's shown he can excel. Yeah,
and I think circling back to the coaching discussion, that's where like getting a guy like like maybe a Ben Johnson might actually work well with O'Connell. If you think about Aidan O'Connell and Jared Goff, they actually have a lot of similarities. They're not exactly the most mobile guys, and they don't have the biggest arms, but Ben Johnson's been able to let it work. So I think, to that point and to your point, if they could bring in someone like him, maybe we get a better evaluation of Aidan O'Connell. And again, circling back to what I was talking about with the draft, like where you're not going to be in a great spot, give this kid one more chance. If he sucks next year, then hey, maybe you're in a good position to be able to draft one, or at least have the rest of the roster in place where you can trade up. So definitely can agree where the valuation where he's been put in an adverse situation can affect it a little bit, and maybe that does weigh into their decision to give him another shot for another year.
Well, the big positive, and I would say like a shocking positive, was how this defense did a complete 180. Like, we're afraid to say Patrick Graham's name out loud because we don't want other teams to hear his name and want him as a coach. Like, it was sorcery. Like 20 years, Matt, 20 years of atrocious defense. And he did a 180 in this season. Like, as soon as AP took over, right? We all saw the stats, first in points scored against. What happened? Like, how did it, I get, like, he's a great defensive coach. He's getting the most out of his players. The juice from AP helps, but like, units don't do 180s like that ever, especially after 20 years of being terrible. And this unit did.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's helped Patrick Graham a lot is going back to last year, like everyone made a lot about the Raiders running a lot of press man coverage. And I kept saying for a while, I'm like, yeah, because they were signing guys off the street to get them to play defensive back. Like they had so many injuries just starting from week one with Anthony Avery going down and getting put on IR, then Nate Hobbs getting put on IR, and they were so banged up back there that at some point that's all you can play, because that's the easiest defense to run, right? I just line up and I guard the guy that's in front of me. Whereas this year they've been a little bit more healthier on the back end. Well, they haven't had necessarily great talent. They can run his scheme. They can run the two high looks. Getting a guy like Marcus Epps has helped, even though Epps hasn't made a ton of impact plays down the stretch. But the fact that they have two safeties now that can play it, and Trevon Merritt getting more comfortable in that system too, has helped a lot. And I mean, the emergence of a guy like Malcom Koonce, who's caught fire since AP took over, has really helped too as well. Because I mean, that was one of the things they were missing last year with Chandler Jones out there and not producing very much. And I think as well as Max Crosby's kind of stepped his game up as he continues to surprise us. So I think Patrick Graham deserves a ton of credit. I'm happy that he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves, because
I'm not.
I was
no recognition.
No recognition. Keep him around. But yeah,
yes, keep him. We want to keep. That's a head coach. He should be on the head coaching watch list for what he did to this defense.
Yeah.
Seriously. He did the same thing with the Giants. He was trending them in the right direction, and then Dable came in and didn't keep anybody, and that's why we were able to get him. But I heard a lot of good things about him at the Senior Bowl. So, yeah, if he's able to do something similar for an entire season next year, I think it's going to be one of the top names for a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, might be one of these this year. I mean, you look at it now, the Raiders are what? I think second to last in cap space allocated, and then in the top 10 in points scored. So, yeah, I mean, it's been fun to watch. I've been really happy because I was excited when they hired Patrick Graham, just because how much he really does adapt his scheme to his players and his skill set. And I think he's done wonders for the defense this year, and just put on a masterclass in that. Because even so, the Raiders don't have a ton of talent. They're getting a lot out of guys like a Robert Spillane, who's having a career year, and again, Malcom Koonce going back to that too, and Merrick as well, playing well. So,
yeah, when Chandler Jones was saying that, I'm doing the things that the coaches wanted me to do. I'm still grading really high with the coaches. I was thinking to myself, is this dude crazy? And it comes to find out, he's actually is crazy.
Yeah.
Also on the defense, like obviously you mentioned Koonce, you mentioned Crosby and Merrick. Like, who's been the biggest surprise for you on this Raiders defense this season?
I mean, I think it definitely has to be Koonce. I think going into this year, I was partially because he just hadn't played. I wasn't holding out much expectations. I think in the preseason, I was thinking he might get cut or traded just because of the way it was shaking out. Granted, I also thought Chandler Jones was going to be on the team. So, and I thought Tyree Wilson, they get a little bit more than what they've gotten out of him this year. But yeah, he's been the biggest surprise to me, especially in this last little stretch to end the season for how well he's grown. And he's starting to get better as a run defender. I keep pointing out on Tape Don't Lie. He's not, a guy that's going to be a huge difference maker against the run. It's probably never his scheme, but he's setting the edge a lot better and starting to pop up a little bit more. So he's been probably my guy that I've been almost the most proud or the most fun to watch for me, just to see his growth, from his rookie season and even the beginning of the year to the way he's finished. So definitely be Malcom Koonce for me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I pointed out, that his ability to play the run better has allowed him to stay on the field more. Because, even as a rookie, he had a good pass rush win rate as a rookie. So you knew that some of the raw skills were there. He just needed to get better. And I know I've heard that you say that a lot about him is if he gets better against the run, he can be on the field longer. It's exactly what's happening now. He's using a lot of his pass rushing skills to keep that and set that edge. So it's all working. So it's a good thing for him going forward to maybe cash in if he has another strong year next year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you might even cash in this season, this offseason.
That's what I was telling RJ. Is like, dude, sign this guy now. Do the same thing you did to who did you do to Max?
Waller.
We did it to Colton Miller. Where we're like, okay, let's extend you. Your next year's still going to be the same, but you're going to get money after that. I would do that for Koonce for sure.
Yeah.
Is our starting DBs next season on the roster currently?
Well, Jack Jones is. I think he's still under contract, and I think he's played well enough that he's going to come back. Again, I think Merrick will be back as well. I believe Epps is under contract for a couple more years. Hobbs, I think Hobbs kind of for me is trending the opposite direction, where he's just turning into a little bit more of a jag, a little more just a guy. Like, he has his moments, he'll have his times, but he is limited. He's going to be a slot corner his entire career. The biggest question is what they're going to do at another cornerback. As much as Jack Jones has played well, I would like to see them get a true number one guy, whether that be a guy like a Jalen Johnson in the draft or Jalen Johnson in free agency, or even like a Kool-Aid McKinstry in the draft. Those are the two guys who I would kind of like circle in. And if they can pull off getting Jalen Johnson and prying him from the Bears, I would be super excited. A guy that's going to be 26 years old, I think, next year, and just made the Pro Bowl, probably going to be an all-pro player, wouldn't surprise me. So I definitely think they need the star in the secondary. They need one of those shutdown guys that can be that difference maker. That's not on the roster, but they do have some solid players, I think, and starting with Jack Jones, who's again come along and probably followed by Merrick and Epps after those two.
What do you think about Wiggins?
Nate Wiggins. So I haven't done too much diving into the corners right now. I kind of focus a little bit more on the front seven with stuff with Bleacher Report, and then once the season ends, I'll dive more into Raiders needs and guys like that. But I do know from what I do know, he's pretty good movement skills and pretty good in coverage and whatnot. Just a little bit lighter on the lighter side and smaller, but
got that long arms though at the length.
Yeah, and those what you love. Yeah, so.
I'm not going to try to test your knowledge like Soto, try to catch you sleeping. That was a good job, man.
No,
I just gave you one last name and he still questioned. I'll give you an easy one.
At least I didn't have to go with who you're talking about. There you go.
Yeah. You knew the full name, you knew enough about it, right? Soto's trying to test you, right? I'm trying to give you I'm trying to make you look good with some layups. Soto's all right, let me see if this guy's.
No, I'm a very big fan of you, man.
Appreciate it.
Josh Jacobs, he's played his last snap with the Raiders, you think?
I think so. I think not only has he not had a good of a year, but you've seen what Zamir White's done in the last few weeks. Now, Zamir White's not Josh Jacobs. I don't mean to say that, but I think Zamir White's played well enough with the money and the running back contract, and Josh Jacobs been banged up the last 3 weeks, questionable for this week again, and kind of throughout his career with the Raiders has always been at least hobbled, maybe not missed as many games, but has been banged up and whatnot. And I just kind of feel like with what they need to do, or with so many other needs and how they're going to need to approach, that 13 or 15 million would be better spent, on a corner, even if the corner is going to cost 20. To have that extra little cushion and cap space would be nice. But as much as I love Jacobs and what he's been able to do, and as much as I was rooting for him to get the bag in the offseason, I kind of feel like, with especially how Zamir White has played and looks so much better than what we've seen in the past, that it's probably going to be him as the lead back, and probably go after a guy that can maybe impact the passing game a little bit more, take some of the load off. But I feel like this is probably going to be it for Jacobs.
Yeah, there was a third windbag, kind of like the fifth Beatle. Like he rarely comes on, but he's in our text string, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he came out of nowhere." I'm like, "What do you mean came out of nowhere? He had 17 carries all last season. How can you tell anything getting one carry per game?"
Yeah. I think the biggest issue with Zamir was even in the preseason he wasn't looking great, and even now he still has issues with his vision. Like there was a few runs last game where he was running in the backs of offensive linemen, and that was kind of his issue at Georgia a little bit too. But yeah, these past 3 weeks have been really fun to watch. He kind of he's been doing a lot better at running behind his pads and being that power rusher that we thought he would be coming out of Georgia, and starting to catch on, and hopefully he can keep that momentum going into next season.
Well, unless Soto has any trap questions about innocuous college players to ask you, I'm ready to move on. Just real quick, we don't need a full break.
Frank Gore Jr.?
Yeah.
So for a sleeper pick at running back late in the draft?
Maybe.
We don't need your full breakdown, but last game of the season, Raider Broncos, our old buddy Jared Stidham. I want it. I like to be able to talk trash to all my Broncos buddies that cleaned your house 4 seasons in a row. So I'll eat the 2 or 3 draft picks it's going to cost, draft positions it's going to cost us. I'm fine with it. How do you think the game looks Sunday?
I think the Raiders can win this one. I mean, the thing that is kind of not great for as far as watching it is it almost is like another preseason game where it doesn't really mean much. And you got 2 guys that weren't week 1 starters. I know Aidan O'Connell is a starter and has been for a while, but both guys started the year as backups. And I think the emphasis for both teams at least should be to kind of give these young guys a little bit more run, maybe let Tyree Wilson, even if he's struggling a little bit, get more snaps than he normally does. So I don't know exactly how the game's going to flow, but I think the Raiders with where they're at with Antonio Pierce, and they know every win that they get makes Pierce's candidacy for being the head coach even better. So I think they'll be a little bit more motivated, whereas if you're the Broncos, you're kind of packing it in at this point for the team. And I know they beat the Chargers last week, but as we all saw in that Thursday night game, the Chargers have packed it in a few months ago, it seems like. So
we packed it for them.
Yeah, exactly. If they hadn't, then we made sure they had their suitcases packed.
Packed their luggage, packed their fudge. We did it all. Where are you on the last game of the season in situations like this? Do we bomb against the Broncos and get those extra draft positions, or is it like, look, you don't tank in the NFL, you play hard?
I mean, being a draft guy, I never hate the tank move, but again, I get it.
True. When
you're Antonio Pierce and you're trying to get a job and you're going to be more than anybody, you're going to wear the record. So I get, going out and playing hard. I kind of look at it as this is a game where I'm not as really concerned about the scoreboard. I just kind of want to see the process a little bit, kind of like I was saying with the preseason where, if a guy like Tyree Wilson can have a good game, that's going to be huge for me, win or lose. I don't really care what the scoreboard says at this point. But yeah, as a draft guy, I do like seeing them creep a little bit closer to the picks. But again, I get it when it's not. It's easy for me to say when the record doesn't follow me, and I don't have to eat the loss or anything like that. Yeah. So,
do we classify Tyree Wilson as a bust as of this season?
I mean, this season's been a bust. Yeah, there's no getting around that. The guys was a top 10 pick and not starting. Like you get those guys, you hope to make an impact this year. What I have tried to explain to people and kind of try to reiterate this point is before we write him off, let's give this guy an off season where he can train instead of rehab and, have a functional coaching staff. I felt like they kind of babied him along too much. Now that's easy for me to say being in my position. I don't know how bad his foot was and how much of an issue that was during training camp. But when he didn't even play until the second to last week in training camp, I'm like, this is a guy that needs reps. This is a guy that's going to need to be able to be on the field. And I feel like now we're seeing that a little bit or at least to begin the season, how I'd kind of hurt him and kind of ended up stunting his growth. Hopefully it ends up paying off in the long run again. And maybe that foot was a bigger issue than we had all realized, but I felt like they kept the training wheels on a little bit too soon with him. And I'd like to see what he can do with that full off season, with a full program, because I'll tell you what, watching that guy play at Texas Tech, there was no question about who was the most physically dominant player on the field when he was at his best, for sure.
You know who didn't have a bad foot? Jalen Carter.
Yeah. No, trust me. I was a big Jalen Carter fan. I think I had a feeling that one was a little bit too close to home with the with the Brown situation. Too similar, but might have been the PR, might have been Mark stepping in and or the PR team stepping in and saying,
"Thanks, Mark.
Can we maybe go with someone else?" But yeah, it's definitely a tough one to swallow right now.
Oof. His name is Matt Holder. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at mholder95. Check out his written work at Silver and Black Pride and Bleacher Report for all his scout stuff. And, of course, make sure you check him out on Tape Don't Lie with our boy Marcus. Matt, finally got you. Glad we did. It was worth me blowing up your Twitter DMs for the last few months.
Oh, no worries. My pleasure, Brad. Appreciate you having me on. I'll have to come back sometime.
Of course.
Perfect.
Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video. And if you're feeling crazy, go ahead and subscribe.